Okay, gang, I believe I have found the fatal flaw to the MS400 intake issues. Let me show you what I can here. All right, so this is the setup. The carburetor goes on right now. All right, now, I mean, we got this metal thing that's missing, but that doesn't come in contact with this rubber thing at all. It goes around it. Anyways, point is whenever you get your carburetor on there and you cinch down these bolts, all right, what happens is, see all that flex? This intake, this rubber intake, does not sit inside of a nice channel or something. I don't know how to put it. It sits on top of it. And so if you over torque it, it flexes that rubber. Now, let me show you here, see if I can set this up. I bought this. This was marketed on eBay as for a MS362/400. And I will say they are different. So even if I wanted to use this, I couldn't because that is smaller than on the 400. But it does the exact same thing. And I can show you really well here. Watch this. And I'm just barely pulling on it. Do you see that thing flex and warp? All right. In previous videos, whenever I was talking about this thing warps whenever you over tighten it, some people, I don't know who, but you know, I think that probably most people that heard me say that is like, well, you know, everything's going to flex if you over tighten it and everything. This is ridiculous. This is absurd how bad that flexes whenever you put just the minuscule pressure on it. And so this is what's causing the problem. And I will go so far as to say it's so bad that there should be a factory recall on this. This is bullshit. This is terrible. It's a terrible design. And if you can look at that and see that and disagree with me, then you're not thinking with your big boy head. You're thinking with your cock because you got a hard on for Stihl chainsaws. That is a problem. And I mean, it's very clear to me how if you put your carburetor on there and you go to tighten it up, boop, it's pulling on that. And yeah, it's sitting up against the carburetor and everything. But still, the slightest amount is warping that. Look at that. Look. And with everything else, I mean, like I've been working on all these Echoes right now. Definitely the Husqvarna 5 series and everything. Whenever they meet up against the carburetor, they have a raised edge or a little lip that sticks out further than the flat part of the intake. That is just nothing but flat. There is no raised bead that runs around there that really grabs good contact onto your carburetor. It's just flat. And so if you are off in the slightest amount, it warps this intake. And when we say warp, you know, we're thinking of, I'm saying we, I mean some viewers. They think that I'm talking about, and you got something metal in there, and you're pulling and you're permanently warping that, and it's a problem. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this is so specific that with 2 foot-pounds or inch-pounds of torque on this is going to cause that to warp, and you have an air leak. Now, you might be out there going, I've been running mine forever, and I don't have a problem with it. Well, good for you. I mean, seriously, I'm not talking at you like a child. Good for you, right? There's lots of Pintos, Ford Pintos, that have been driven throughout the decades, right? Does that mean that they didn't have the problem with the gas tank exploding whenever they got into a rear-ended accident? No, the problem still existed. They just hadn't had that pop up yet. And but this is a real problem. That is a real problem. And regardless of the fact that I cannot use this, because this is clearly off of a 362, and it is a smaller intake diameter than my 400, all right? Regardless of that, the problem is so abundantly clear that the only option I see is to put Durco on it. So I'm going to clean up that intake really well, right? Get all the oil and gas off of there, clean it up really well. Same thing with this carburetor, clean it up really nice. And yeah, put a very thin coat of Durco on there. I will be really, really vigilant around the impulse hole there and make sure that I don't have any that could get into that impulse hole. And I will put it back on there, very lightly snug it up, right? Just lightly snug it up and let it dry. And then come back the next day and reassemble it properly all together, and hopefully that'll cure my leaking intake. And you know, again, you may say you don't have a problem, and you may not. You may not. But also it might be that because this thing is now pretty heavily ported and it's flowing a lot more air and fuel, well, the M-tronic can't keep up. All right, and so your stock saw can keep up with that small air leak that it may have, or it probably doesn't. I'm not saying that every one of these things have air leaks, but I am saying that whenever you have an issue that's so finicky that you can't take it apart, make some modifications, and then put it back together without worrying about getting an air leak here, then that's a real problem. I mean, it's bad. It's bad. It just wants to lift up there, and it's a completely flat rubber piece. And to think that this thing is going to be able to maintain a seal whenever it heats up and cools down and heats up and cools down. I know a lot of people are going to think that I'm just going, oh, I'm hating on it because it's a Stihl. Ooh, I don't like Stihl. That's not it. I want to love this saw. But it keeps having, I mean, it shouldn't be having this issue. All right. And I know people have mentioned that a lot of the Husky 2 series with their intake blocks, those things leaked. You're not wrong. That was shit too. I'm not saying that it wasn't. However, I've never seen one this finicky. This is so bad that like say with the Husky, you go, the intake's leaking again. You know, it cracked the intake, blah, 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 whatever you could say. Well, you replace it and you're fine. This right here, the factory part itself, the design concept is flawed. So it's not a failure of the part, because the part's fine. I'm going to reuse the part. It's so flexible and rubber, buying a new one would just be pointless. It would be pointless. I'm going to have the same issue with the new one. I thought that maybe there was a metal plate, just like I'm sure you guys, probably a lot of you thought that maybe there was a metal plate or a plastic plate that really got warped because of extreme pressure. No extreme pressure was put on this at all. And, you know, well, I mean, he tried everything. I'm sure he tightened it up and loosened it up and everything, but it's just a flawed design concept that they actually went to full on manufacturing with, and they never should have. Hey, I just want to throw this in there. I know, same thing can be said about the Husqvarna 5 Series crank bearings. It's a stupid design. that serves no purpose but, I don't know, to make them money whenever you buy new ones. The crank bearings in the 5 series, the 550 XP and the 562 early ones, they've since seemed to have fixed it. They seem to have fixed it with the larger saws as well. But I don't want to let them slide either, because that is a modern chainsaw that is built for professionals, and you shouldn't have to deal with little issues like that. And it's bullshit. So I'm mad at Husqvarna too. All you Stihl guys that are going to get bent out of shape, because here later on, I'm going to start really bitching about this design flaw. But Husky's got them too. I get it. They should have came up with a better solution than that. Because, hey, let me see. I got something right here. There we go. This is a intake off of a Husqvarna 550 Mark 1. And this is what I'm talking about that bead all the way around the edge. All right? It raises up so that you are guaranteed a good seal up against your flat carburetor. You can't put two flat things together and just expect it just to work, especially whenever you pull on it. This one here on the bottom tends to warp and get all stupid. All right? God, that's upsetting. It's upsetting because it's 2024. This is a brand new design saw. This is only a couple years old. And you did shit like that, Stihl? Yeah, I am that upset about it because it's stupid. It's dumb. It shouldn't be happening. And it requires pressure to make the seal. My guess is it is. So this is the carb. And we have that raised edge right there, right, that goes into the boot. That's probably sealing up just fine. Just fine. What we're probably getting a leak from is around the impulse area, right? I don't know. Fuck, I don't know. But we're going to go ahead and do the Durco thing, and hopefully that'll fix the problems. But, damn. Why did they do that? It flexes so easy. And I'm just barely pulling on it. So you can imagine what these nuts do whenever you're tightening them down. Even just a little bit, you're tightening them down. They could put way more pressure on this setup than I can, right? Imagine you tighten them up a little bit too much. Look at that. So that's what we're fighting on this MS400. We're fighting that crazy warpage of that soft rubber boot. And it shouldn't be happening. And it doesn't sit in there well at all. Look at this. Remove that metal thing off of there. Look at that. That's how it sits in there. It just, boom. It just doesn't go together well. Whereas this Husky setup, it's down in there. It's down in there, and it's really held in place nicely. I'm pulling up on that, and it ain't warping. So, anyways, wish me luck on putting this thing back together. I hate that I'm using Durco on something like this, because I just shouldn't have to. It's a dorky way to fix it, but I don't see any other option. And I want this saw to run. I want it to run like crazy and use it and have fun with it. So hopefully this is the fix, and I'll get to that. Okay, so I got a very light coating. Let me see. Yeah. Very light coating of Durco around there. I mean, I know it looks heavy on camera. It is not. If I touch it, I hit, you know, aluminum. It is a very, very light coating. I made sure I was delicate around the impulse area so that hopefully nothing is going to squish into the impulse area. We have the same thing going on here. All right. Boy, it does look heavy on camera. But that's as light of a coating as I can actually give it. Period. All right. So now, here's what I'm going to do. Wait a minute. Oh, that goes there. All right, we're good. We're good. Good. Thought I left something out, but I did not. It appears to be making contact all around and everywhere. I got it lightly snugged down, and we are just going to it's like the damn flippy caps on Stihl. They always leak. So anyways, we got it lightly snugged down, and we're going to let it sit there and dry overnight. And we'll come back then and reinstall everything properly. And hopefully, cross fingers that, you know, we fixed the problem. Stihl needs to put me on payroll. I'm telling you, if they did and actually listened to what I said, they'd have better chainsaws. I don't know what it is about that company being overly complicated. I don't know. BMWs are the same way. You know, Volkswagens are the same way. German engineering got hyped as the best engineering on the planet. And it may have been at one time. But now, I just see it as overly complicated. For no reason. It's like, why all these complications? You know? But that right there is overly simplistic. I don't know. Whatever. hopefully it works, and hopefully it'll be a good, strong runner, because, I mean, whenever it's in its power, my gosh, this thing pulls. It's like, it pulls like a freight train. Too much, in my opinion. You know, sorry. I know nobody wants to hear that, but it's so effing strong for such a small, lightweight saw. Like the video where I was cutting up big wood with it, the way that, you know, whenever the chain on top would start hitting the kerf that I had already cut, you know, I'm going down, right? And the chain on top hits that kerf because the tree is folding in on itself, right? That kerf that I just cut is getting smaller at the top. And so the top of my chain starts hitting it. And the saw pushing back against me. I mean, it's fun and I like it. And if it runs better, then I might just really love it. But it's got so much power in its current state now after Ethan ported it. I'm like, I don't know. Because a bigger saw with that much power wouldn't have kicked back at me so hard because it's heavier, you know? But this is a little lightweight saw, and that's what I mean whenever I'm like, a 28-inch bar, I don't feel like it belongs on this. It's because it's a small saw, and it's got the power to pull it, though. It truly does. But it's more about the small, nimble saw than it is about power. Whenever I'm saying you shouldn't run a 28-inch bar on this, it's because it's small. But anyways, more testing on this in the future, and hopefully that right there is going to fix our problem. All we got to do is wait a little bit and put it back together tomorrow and see how she does.